This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
Welcome back. Like I said, the topic for today is the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme. My guest is Mallam Ibrahim Damcida. I'm sure you are curious, Mallam Damcida and then the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme. Mallam Damcida. Usually when I start this program, I go through the profile of my guest. But today I'm going to do something a little bit unusual because I'll let my first question do that introduction, as the case may be. So, when people out there listening to us will be wondering, Mallam Damcida and the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme, how did we get there? I mean, can you please help listeners resolve the seeming contradiction that throws up? How did we get there? And I'm talking about your background. Who are you? Where did you grow up? Are you of IGBO instruction?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ken, and good afternoon, viewers. Listeners in this case. It's a pleasure to be here. So, Doctor's question is around my background. Now, my name is Alhaji Damcida. I wear a lot of hats, but at this time in my life, I would rather be referred to as a project developer and a project manager. So, I grew up in Lagos. My family actually relocated to Lagos in 1958 or some other time like that, around that period. Now, this makes us very, very much Lagos people, even though, you know, the qualification of being Lagosian is determined elsewhere. But, of course, we've been here since 1958. So, I did my early education in Lagos. Subsequently, I moved to northern Nigeria, where I was at the Nigerian military school. After that, I had a career in the military, and then subsequently went to the university. I was in University of Maiduguri, where I studied banking and finance. And after that, came back to Lagos and joined the hustle, the Lagos hustle. Now, in between, I've been, opportune to go to several business schools. First, I was at the
Mallam Damcida, we'll come back to your schools. Like I said, I'm going to, go back because I wanted the foundation. Now you've given that foundation, I'm going to go back to your profile because I like to do justice to it. But before I go to your profile, we're talking about the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme.
Absolutely.
And let me remind you of what the Igbos do mostly. They name their children, very beautiful but meaningful names. For example, they say Nwaoha, which means a child of community. At some point, we are going to relate this name to the conversations of today because it is so fundamental to what the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme is all about. But let me take your profile. Mallam Damcida is a certified energy manager, risk manager, project and developer, project manager, and a techno-commercial advisor. He had his degree in banking and finance from the University of Maiduguri, a professional MBA in energy management from the Vienna University for Business and Economics. He is an alumni of Harvard Business School. Mallam Damcida has over 18 years experience in developing projects across energy, infrastructure, finance, real estate, agro-allied processing, and mining. So you can see the man is of many parts when you talk about intellectual curiosity and contemporary relevance. Now, before I go into the questions, I would like our listeners to be participants to this discourse because it's what a topic for today, the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme. You can reach us on 09092172973. I take that again, 09092172973 or at Classic FM 973 if you go through our Twitter. Now, parents bring the child to the world, like the Igbos say. Yes. Communities ensure that the children succeed and thrive. Could that have been the foundation for this thought process?
Well, so, Doctor, let me digress a bit. You mentioned the fact that Igbos give names that have meanings. Now, yes. I'll also tell you my own, calling.
Okay.
So the Igbos refer to me as Ezigbo Madu.
Ezigbo Madu.
and this is against others. The first it was Onyogo Hausa. Then when I became very, when they became very comfortable with me, then I became Ezimo Manu.
Okay.
Right? So anyway, now, yes, the truth is, the timeline for this particular scheme hasn't been properly situated in terms of established. But of course, the morality component from the family unit to society has played a major role. Because if you look at both sides, meaning the master, the apprentice, without adequately being situated with, tangible values, right? The ability to even relate would not have existed. So, of course, there is that, community, family, influence within the entire establishment. But those were prominent mostly prior to engagement. At point of engagement, what made or what had instituted or organized the relationship proper is the personal principle of the master and the obedience of the apprentice. These two things have been main drivers of that relationship. The master's principles and the level of obedience of the apprenticeship.
So there's something godly about it, if I can use that word, because
absolutely,
the IGBO apprenticeship scheme demonstrates in practical terms the value of living out of the godly injunction for man to be his brother's keeper.
Right.
In fact, I could quote Genesis chapter 4, verse 9, where it is clearly spelled, today being Sunday. Because the richest in the community is only as rich as his poorest.
Absolutely.
That is how the Igbos think, I am told, and I know. So was that what gave birth to the foundation of this scheme?
So if you look at nature, I mean, if this is looking at humanity from the cradle, right? Man has always been, accommodating of the other man.
Okay.
Right? Of course, rivalry exists. They need to conquer. They need to also, maybe shut doors out and so on. All exist. But primarily, humanity, without knowing who the next man is, once you smile, a smile often comes back. The probability of having that smile come back, right, is higher than having a frown.
Fantastic.
So if you see that, yes, the godly aspect plays a role, but again, this is confirming what today the modern world has realized is a solution to ending poverty. Today, the modern world says shared prosperity is a solution to ending poverty. But this thing has had shared prosperity for more than a century. Right?
Mallam Damcida, you're so spot on. And I'll quote Professor Ndubisi Ekekwe. I don't know if you've heard of that name. He's
very passionate.
He has his perspective to this subject.
Absolutely, very passionate.
Yes,
very passionate.
He has his subject. By the way, my guest for today is Mallam Ibrahim Damcida. Listen, Mallam, the IGBO apprenticeship scheme. Listen to what Professor Ndubisi Ekekwe said. He said, his description of it, he says, is a Nigerian model for stakeholder capitalism. That's how he captured it. And he went further to say the Igbos in Africa has been practicing this for centuries, and it's now become what is known as IGBO apprenticeship system. It's a communal enterprising framework where successful businesses develop others, and others over time provide capital and pass along their customers to the new generation of businesses. And it comes with its own benefits, and we'll talk about the framework behind it, but this is how he had captured it. So do you agree with that?
So I wouldn't agree 100%, right? Okay. Why? Because I think there's a little blind spot there. But Prof has summarized, what it is from the surface. I would want to go deeper and say, well, it's not only about being a capitalist structure, because if you call it a capitalist structure,
because he said it's stakeholder capitalism.
Yeah, so that sort of description wouldn't fit, because this is more of social capitalist arrangement, because you are as a master, you are identifying a particular skill in a young potential apprentice, right? Or the apprentice family is shopping for a match make between, a master that's convenient or capable of uplifting their ward. Now, in that aspect, right, the capitalist structure doesn't do soliciting, right? The capitalist structure, it's more of a competitive. So if you qualify it as a capitalist structure or stakeholder capitalism, it will have been some raffle draw. Somebody qualifies based on, some other metric of competitive ideologies.
Yeah, but that's not the case.
No. So I would refer to it as a social capitalist approach. Yes, stakeholder driven. Stakeholder regulated. However, the drive is, the benefit we see at the end of the day is the material possession or the capacity of the participants. Now, but the latent benefit is the fact that the apprentice has undergone delayed gratification, which is one thing that we as Africans do not have normally. Delayed gratification, meaning you are anticipating a reward at the end of the day without having anything to hold, as some form of substitution for that reward, right? And this means that the patience level of this apprentice is what builds discipline. If you notice, a lot of them, of course, these days they now become flamboyant, but those days they were not. Those days you will see them with whatever vehicle and the black purse under their armpits, right? They would be very, very careful in how they spend money, how they even interact with society, right? Because they know where they're coming from. That discipline has stretched its value within their entire life spectrum.
Fantastic, but and I hear you and I agree with you, by the way, because you've enriched that, because if we just allow it to be described as such, to say stakeholder capitalism, then it takes it to the extreme, isn't it? But let's go back to the fundamentals. How did this come about? Was there any fundamental incident in Nigeria that induced this? So, in your own estimation?
So from my timelines are hard to put, right? And I'll tell you, a lot of people make mistakes to say, this came after the Civil War. No. Prior to the Civil War, if you look at Sir Louis Odibegu, and others who were prominent business people before the Civil War, what they did was they had more of export transactions than import. I was telling you earlier about the Water Timber Company. This is the West African Timber Company. Even the coming of the African Banking Corporation, which was 1890, right? So the African Banking Corporation focused on financing export. And that export process within the value chain had its apprenticeship system. So that must have been most likely, the period this thing came about, and it will have been as a result of the fact that we have, as a society, imbibed communal living. So it's always easy to say, this smart young man walking under me would be my apprentice, and then, so two ways. The path for the trade is one. There is also the path for the craft. This is the path that a lot of people don't talk about. The craft apprenticeship system exists within the IGBO apprenticeship scheme. So there's the trade, land trade, then there's the learn craft. That craft, even though human transformation has diluted it, right? It's actually the bedrock of what societies like Taiwan, like Korea, even China have built themselves. Because that craft is what brings about machining spare parts of automobile or motorcycles, right? So yes, timelines are hard to pinpoint because, this scheme has not been properly documented. And because it is also the self-regulating type of arrangement where, people knew what was required of them.
Have we gotten to a stage where this scheme should have been formalized?
So, formalization, again, it's quite tricky, right? For me, formalization should be stakeholder-driven, the government should not come in.
Okay.
Not at all. And formalization shouldn't be that you merge them with the existing school education or, Western education or, the academic structure. No. It is another form of learning. Okay. So when you acquire knowledge, right, this is one part of it. The ability to apply what you've acquired, it's another. And I'll tell you this short story.
Okay.
One of the practitioners of this scheme, right, maybe 10 years ago, right, this boy knew every clause of a documentary writer of credit off head, swift clause, right? So, and I asked, I said, come, and this was the time when they depended on letter of credits. They didn't have to buy, dollars in the black market and all that. No, so he knew every clause and what it signified, right? I was a businessman. I didn't know all of these clauses and what they signified. This guy knew offhand.
Wow.
Now, it means something. It means he's been able to acquire this knowledge that is relevant to his craft or to his business, right? So if we say we want to formalize them, we can say maybe standardize, empower stakeholder within the structure, because they are self-governing, right? Unlike the other apprenticeship schemes you see around that are weak and maybe dependent on either the traditional system for hereditary and so on. This is a self-governed, right?
No contracts.
No contracts. Contracts are bilateral, unwritten, and more driven by trust and faith, right?
Trust and faith.
Yes. So, if you look at it, the moment they start to document things, it will water down the viability of the scheme. The reason this scheme has succeeded and has lasted for this long is the fact that nobody was documenting anything between, the two contracting parties. They were mutually agreeing, even though sometimes it will be an agreement between the parents and the master in place of the apprentice. But the parents were ultimately doing it for the good of the apprentice, because the apprentice in 7 years or so realizes that the decision his parents took, right, matured and have become fruitful.
Fantastic. Right. Now, Mallam Damcida, this scheme, the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme, has created some of the largest businesses in Africa.
Absolutely.
If I'm allowed to mention, if you take Innocent Motors, for example, it's today the largest indigenous automobile manufacturing company by sales in
Absolutely.
Africa. If you take Koskari's group, it's a conglomerate today with diverse interests in manufacturing automobiles and petrochemicals. If you look at Ibeto Group, something we can go on and on. But something that is common, as typical of some of these founders, they did not maybe go through the same kind of educational trajectory like we do. I mean, somebody goes through primary school, secondary school, and university. Yes. Some of them have they went into this scheme, multiplied themselves, have created huge values out of this scheme. They may have gone to university after, like we know.
Yes.
So how is it possible to find this incredible acumen and balance? How did they put that together?
So when you acquire practical knowledge before theory, it helps you.
Okay.
Right. So I went to business school as a business person, so it was easier. And people in my business school class were mostly university leavers and just fresh out of school.
Okay.
So I saw the benefits, and this also tells you that the apprentice today, the typical apprentice today, if you take an apprentice that has just gotten weaned, meaning graduated from his master's, enclave, and put a graduate, the only thing the graduate would be able to demonstrate, maybe, is the fact that the network that graduate has established within the school premises or school system would guarantee some door opening and so on. But the apprentice is quite practical. The apprentice wouldn't want you to show him, the MPV of a project before he invests. No. He is after, if this project is profitable, why are people not doing it?
Okay.
I want to know who else is doing it. That's one. Two, what this project would produce, where is it currently coming from? I want to know where it's coming from.
Okay.
How much are those people bringing it for? So MPVs, IRRs all come after.
This is The Discourse with Dr. Ken.
There's a lot of messages here. I'm going to take a couple of them, but just let me come back to you, Mallam, because there's this misconception. People think that this scheme held back the Southeast from educational pursuit. It's there's some kind of debate around it. Is it why they didn't quite go to school? Is there any tendency that people of that age would rather go for this scheme instead of going to school? But let me give you some statistics. Nigeria has an average literacy rate of 62%.
Yes.
Most states within Nigeria, within the IGBO apprenticeship scheme, recorded in excess of 90% literacy.
Very true.
Yet Nigeria has just 62%. And states who are engaged in this are recording between 90 and 92% literacy rate. Kindly explain this, because there's a wrong notion coming there. They don't go to school, they go to the market, they start a scheme. But the statistics say otherwise.
Now, when you look at the world from the perspective that a document decrees your status or capacity and determines your success, right? It's a myopic perspective.
Okay.
Why? Because what is education and what is even literacy? Literacy means ability to read and write. That's basic.
Okay.
A lot of these guys in the scheme can read and write, right? Your ability to acquire knowledge and apply that knowledge you've acquired, it is the most relevant of everything else.
Okay.
Right? It hasn't held back people. It hasn't. Because, see, without economic stability, education in its form, right, becomes threatened.
Okay.
So if you look at education as only going to the classroom, then you probably give it a different meaning. Education is not only about going to the classroom.
Okay.
Right? There are people who have never been, in the four walls of a classroom that are able to comprehend better, that are able to reason deeper, and they're able to provide solutions. Problem solving. It's not a function of somebody taught you something on the blackboard. No, it's the function of how you apply your initiatives.
Okay.
I've met traders in this scheme that can solve problems, a lot of the multinational consulting firms would struggle to understand.
Really?
I'm telling you. Well, okay, so maybe you should look at it from this perspective. The chance of success, if I have 10 boys and I'm a master in the apprenticeship scheme, the chance of success is 4 boys are going to succeed, minimum.
Okay.
Right? Private equity, venture capital, out of 10 deals, I'm only sure of 2, 3, max.
That's
so
interesting.
This has, I don't have full data, but based on my experience with private equity and venture capital society, right, I will tell you, out of 10 deals, 2, 3.
Wow.
But these guys, they would have 4, sometimes 5. Right? And the certainty level, it's almost known from the second and third year. Because that boy who comes late, who wakes up late, you already know he's lagging behind. That boy who is early, who cleans up the shop, who comes, who understands that the books are in order, whose customers pay down on time, who follows up with customers, you already know where that boy is going to. Right? Yes, there is the human right component. Okay? A lot of people hinge on that to say, oh, well, there's the child labor, there's the human rights, there's the all of that. And my question is, economic empowerment dilutes the impact or the exposure to that whole shortcoming we are fixated with. The real human right challenge is the fact that people or kids wake up and they're not able to eat. Parents bring kids to this world and cannot feed them. That's the greatest human right,
It's a bigger predicament.
Absolutely. Right? So an opportunity for someone to get economically empowered and also have the extended benefit of deepened knowledge of a market system. Because, this is one of the few markets in the world that is efficient, where competitive rivalry between master and apprentice at the point of waning is never a factor. Right? Both of them are looking at the customer's desire as the moving target.
Yeah.
Not looking at the fact that if I weigh my apprentice...
So their focus is on the customer.
Absolutely.
And which comes, if you look at the 21st century, business.
Customer-centric ideas.
It's customer-centric. So
Absolutely.
again, it means the 21st century interpretation of customer, again, is borrowing from this scheme.
Very true.
Because
very true.
Today you have to go from mining your data, gives you hindsight, insight, and what do you need all that for? Is so that you understand the consumer journey, understand consumer pain points.
Very true.
Which these guys do, even though in traditional terms and methods.
These guys understand a customer's order.
Okay.
From a mere telephone call, they know when a customer's payment usually comes. They know what a customer does for a living without having to carry out formal KYC.
Okay.
They know their customers, right? They create that habit of continuous engagement to build trust between themselves and the customers, right? And these customers, for some reason, now, we forget one thing, right? This scheme itself is part of the contributory factors within our society that has fostered national cohesion, right? The apprentice lives in Ewi, Onitsha, goes to Kano, goes to Sokoto, goes to, Ondo to open up a shop.
Okay.
This alone is having more impact than NYSC. NYSC was created for that scheme, right? To bring about national cohesion and, positive interaction across the country. But this scheme is doing it without any order or government enforcement or, and it's not 1 year.
What a scheme it is. In fact, it's fantastic. By the way, it's being studied in the best universities in the world, talking about your alumni, the Harvard Business School. There is no doubt the IGBO Apprenticeship Scheme has been recognized as the largest business incubator in the world. And going from what we've discussed so far, you would attest to that. Listeners, there are a lot of messages here. You can still reach us on 0909-217-2973 at Classic FM 97.3. By the way, there's a message here, Mallam Damcida. He's saying that if the IGBO apprenticeship system is formalized, will it really distort the natural equilibrium in the system?
So formalization in this case can only happen without government involvement, without external regulation. If it's formalized in a situation where stakeholders regulate themselves better and develop some internal standardization, right, without having any external factor, right, then it won't be diluted. But when you say you want to formalize it and say you want to have some government bearing or government intervention or interference, what happens is there's a natural trust deficit between people and government in our society.
Fantastic.
Right?
Yeah.
And we have to avoid that. Because this structure or industry has been built on the back of trust. This mutual trust and the trust bond has only come about because two people have aligned interest. So if you have a regulator that is external, what will be the regulator's interest?
Fantastic. So, there's this conversation around it too, where it says that this scheme is so good, apart from the economic and commercial benefit, that it brings some kind of stability and equality and, if you like, peaceful coexistence within communities. Does it help to foster that? So,
nationally, it is one of the main drivers of, fostering cohesion among people. Why? Because what would it cost for you to go to another man's land, open up your business, and gradually start to even invest your, time and more resources to build a house and all of that in another man's land? What would it cost? It would only cost faith. If you don't have faith in what you're doing, and you don't have faith in the society where you're doing your business, then these things can be possible.
Fantastic. There's a message here for you, Mallam Damcida. He said, are you Alhaji Ibrahim Damcida's son? If yes, is he still alive? Good afternoon, madam, if he is saying. She didn't quite say which of the Damcidas, but this is a very popular surname.
So yes,
what would you say to that?
Yes, he passed on June 3rd, 2012 in the airplane accident.
Sorry about that. May his soul rest in peace. Now, Mallam Damcida, now, are there comparable systems to the IGBO apprenticeship scheme around the world?
Yes, they are. So, and this is when you look at it from the fact that the IGBO apprenticeship scheme has two branches, the learned trade and the learned craft.
Okay.
Right? Yes, they are apprenticeship schemes that are similar, but not as sustainable. One very prominent one is the traditional apprenticeship scheme, which if you look at today, the English people don't do it any longer. But if you look at locksmith, goldsmith, all of these families had passed down that, knowledge to their children, and gradually family built it and so on, right? And that apprenticeship scheme was passing skill, knowledge, contacts, and everything else, to the next generation. Now, this is for the craft side. Okay. The trade side, the Mediterraneans had something similar, and even the Persians. But it was all built within family. So it's the family type apprentice. Now, the explorers, so if you look at the explorers, this is Vasco da Gama, this is Christopher Columbus, even Eric Shackleton. Okay. They all had their apprentice, who at the time would be their assistants, right? But that apprentice, and this apprenticeship scheme globally started from the shipping industry, right? Because the captain would have his boys. Later, the rail industry picked it up, and the commercial transportation picked it up. The motor boy, right, is an apprentice. Okay. The motor boy had high chances of becoming the driver one day. Okay, like that. So, but none of the schemes has existed in its original context like this one. None of them. Okay. Even the ones that the Indians run, which has to do with informal Baroda change, is called Kawala, right? Even Kawala, has not really succeeded like this one, because they've all had to come under government regulation. They've all had to, and even this one, in truth, has gotten diluted along the line. So the guys who were masters in the 80s, for example, became so prominent and became friends with politicians and started to do government contracts. Okay. So rather than weighing apprentice under them, they started to diversify their businesses. They went into real estate, they went into everything else. Now, that process of diversification was actually delaying or discarding, because they corporatized. They corporatized their business and decided to jettison the passover to apprentice. A lot of them, and because I have no permission to mention anyone's name, but
yes, it's quite interesting, because it's not alien, but I'm happy that you've given context to that, so that we know that some kind of apprenticeship scheme, exists all over the world. But the IGBO apprenticeship scheme is very, very different, and it has its own peculiarities, and could actually, in fact, somebody just sent in. He says that the IGBO apprenticeship scheme is currently being studied in Ivy League universities around the world, and it is taught at the university level at Harvard, while our universities continue to neglect such a scheme. Say, what a shame.
So our universities are not neglecting it, right? What has happened is the scheme itself, right? And I think we might need to discuss it in depth. The scheme itself has not transformed from where it was at inception. So there's a friend of mine, a Taiwanese, a Japanese based in China. He said to me, in 1973, I supplied motorcycle parts to Nigeria. In 1985, I did the same thing. In 2005, right, same thing. Nothing changed apart from price and quantity. But in comparison, in Egypt, I stopped exporting some of these parts in 1984 because there was a local program that encouraged machining these parts in the Egyptian market, right? So the Egyptians, rather than import some of these basic parts, would rather machine it. But we have kept, importing. And the reason why is because the industry itself, the apprenticeship scheme, itself, has not transformed based on stakeholder awareness to live where it is today, to move forward. That's why, if you notice, the the entire scheme has not thought of owning a bank or having a bank that can actually finance its expansion to leverage capacities and scale, right? That's why today you will see that the scheme has not made room for programmers or developers to be incorporated. IT programmers, IT developers to be, because if the scheme adopts IT people into its mainstream, what would happen is
mind blowing. Now, I'm happy you led me to that conversation, because I was going to ask you, should this scheme have been extended into other aspects of our businesses? I mean, talking about Nigeria, other than trading, say banking, finance, oil and gas. If the scheme didn't, why?
So the truth is, the scheme has its shortcomings, right? Okay. Whether we like it or not, we have to accept it has its shortcomings, despite the numerous benefits and accolades, right? So part of the shortcomings are the fact that, one, there are no guidelines.
Okay.
Two, it has not become institutionalized proper, where, most masters would tell you, I can talk to one lawyer, and get things done,
okay.
Right? The scheme itself should have a regulation internally. It should have lawyers within,
okay.
Right? Should have, other professionals within, accountants, for example.
Okay.
They still have this, cash book type arrangement. Now, that hinders growth. Right? So industries like banking are quite sophisticated. So it means they have to now adopt the agency model by having to invest into others. Now, if you look at investing into others, what it has done for the traders, they tried it earlier. Right? I think Fidelity was founded, owner. I think Fidelity was founded by that man through funding from traders.
Okay.
Omuha, I think is Dr. Onura or something like that. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
But through funding from traders, right? When he...
is it Awo Kakano or something?
Yes, I think so. He later went into politics.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the original founder.
Okay.
So, but his capital came from the traders.
Okay.
Right? A lot of the others have, even Koskaris was a major investor in Access, right? But he had to depend on others.
Okay.
Now, the reason was because the organization or specialization required for industries like banking are quite different. They're not trade-driven. They're more of service delivery. Now, the mentality of trade gives you a different dimension to money making.
Okay.
Service delivery has something that's hidden, and the average trader would tell you, no, I cannot anticipate. I cannot speculate. I want to buy and sell. Let me see everything, in black and white.
Yeah.
Right. So that also, hindered the expansion. But there are ways to do it. They can adopt, traditional banking methods, like the way the Medicis did. Okay. And what is this? So loss mutualization, for example, can be insurance. So where every participant in the scheme, credits an account every year or every month, and when somebody is in trouble, they cover that part of the person's trouble or problem, due to mishap. For example, markets get burnt down, then the scheme can actually fund part of it through loss mutualization type accounts. Then for banking, they can do the non-interest type banking, right? Which can be self-regulating within, and this can all be modified, but they shouldn't depend on external parties. They can have external parties as advisors and consultants, but the moment they are now put in a position where they become silent investors or passive investors in a third party's business, the certainty of their future becomes in doubt, and this is evident by what history has taught us.
Fantastic. My guest is Mallam Damcida, Ibrahim Damcida, Mallam Ibrahim Damcida. I'd like to call all the names, just so that That is what a noun he is. I take a message from a listener. He says the guest in the studio is an extremely intelligent man. He speaks eloquently too, that I can see. It's been a pleasure listening so far, blah, blah, blah. But he's saying, is there a recorded version of the show? Yes, we normally circulate through all our platforms after the show that is live, and just to make sure that we keep circulating it on all our internet and all platforms that you can reach. Now, Mallam Damcida, should this scheme have been extended? Yes, you've said that. Now, the question I would ask next is that, apart from, should we really, as a scheme, put it together and be deliberate about it and study this in some of our Nigerian universities?
Yes, but outside universities, the practitioners have to be ready to document and also develop data. So I'll tell you how I struggled. What I did was to almost run an espionage because they're too secretive about. So when you ask, how do you import? Where do you import from? They think you want to see their cash book.
Okay.
You know, they think you want to know their customers. Now, but I keep saying, no. The internet is open. I can import anything I want. There's nothing you're selling that's not on Amazon or Alibaba or any of these platforms, right? But again, they must be. So they missed out on historical documentation because their timeline now is a bit controversial. I have been able to shift it to 1890. You know, coming of the African Banking Corporation, for example. They also have not documented events properly. You know, you see documentaries, you see some other interviews here and there on TV, but that's not enough. There must be some guideline.
Okay.
Right? And the guideline can only come from the practitioners themselves. Okay. Right? They must be ready to regulate themselves. They must be ready to expand the views. And this thing about, you know, at the end of the contractual period or at the end of the service period, the master can turn his back and disappoint the apprentice, right? Can all be regulated through guidelines. Okay. Right? There shouldn't be any documentation between them in terms of formal contract. You know, no. Because that formal contract takes away the major ingredient, like I mentioned earlier. Right? It takes away that ingredient.
What I've decided to do, because this is so topical and it's so expansive a topic, so I've brought Mallam Damcida today so that he lays the foundation, especially from the intellectual side of you. You know, he has insight. You know, he studied this scheme. People are asking me, did he really live the scheme himself? You know, was he an apprentice at some point? We are going to get a 2.0 where I'm going to bring one of the heavyweights who have lived this game and have multiplied both talents, multiplied businesses, and multiplied value. Sometime in August/September, we are going to bring in some guy from the Southeast who has lived it. So it's two parts. One, the intellectual part, the concept part, two, the practical part. So you'll be patient out there. Now, Mallam Damcida, today on this show, the discourse with me, Dr. Ken, have been a task of, if I can use the word, you know, we have a task of branding this concept with a formal name. You know, I want us to brand it with a formal name, you know. We have concepts like Reaganomics, etc. In fact, we had the Buharinomics. So what nomics can this IGBO apprentices scheme? How do we brand it?
It's already branded. It's called Umene Economics. So it's already branded. You know, it has to come from within. It has to come from them. What I've realized is now, and that's a very interesting question. If I've lived the scheme before and all of it, no. So I haven't lived the scheme as a practitioner. Yes, but I've invested. Okay, I've also followed, and I have very good friends that are practitioners on a day-to-day. Okay, right? What I've not done, I've just not gone to a master to say, teach me. Okay. Right? But I followed. Okay. I've played all the espionage. Yes. Of course, yes. I can tell you, you know, when a container comes and you put it at Ladipo, right? I can tell you the likelihood of having maybe 5-10 people on that container. I can also tell you the fact that this container would have come from location XYZ, because but again they also lack this ability to have some forecasting on the macroeconomic side, right? So their own type of forecasting is based on market now, which is plausible, but they would miss out on not knowing that the price of steel in the international market is going to rise because there's a war in Ukraine, and Russia and Ukraine are the largest producers of steel, for example, right? They would miss out on things like the global supply chain backlog in China is going to delay shipments as a result of, the COVID of 2020 and also the slowdown of the economy, right? So analysis from that perspective seems to be missing, but they have their ways. Yeah, they have their ways. They have their ways of arriving at, their own conclusion, and it works for them, right? It works for them. If you look at what the scheme has done, independently, they forgot about when the government had multiple exchange rate. They forgot about the official rate and focused on the parallel market to do their business. Yes, right. And they hardly tap into any government incentive. Right? Sometimes when I have conversations, I say, "Oh, guys, I think you need to start looking at how to assemble these things locally, because this is as simple." And this is talking about brake pads, for example, right? Or vehicle batteries, right? And I say, look at brake pads. Some time ago, I think Ibeto tried, and it got shut down. Then some other parties also tried. But brake pads should be assembled here. Oil filter. Oil filter should be assembled here. Should be produced here. Actually, it's the injection molding and so on for some of these Japanese cars, right? But the response I get is nobody would take that risk. We don't want uncertainty. And to eliminate uncertainty, we prefer to buy, sell, make margins, buy again, expand our inventory, right? And this you can't blame them, because building a business in Nigeria, it's a lot of risk. This society is full of uncertainties.
Yes, the last 5 minutes of the program, Mallam Damcida, you are going to give us your African or Nigerian proverb and your preferred music for the day. But before we go into that, let me ask this question. I've heard all that and it's all fantastic, but is it a zero-sum game, really? What do I mean? Is this scheme empowered? Does it empower stakeholders to create value for all stakeholders? Yes. I'm talking of investors, workers, customers, communities, and environment. But in summary, I mean, when you look at it from a very extreme point of view, is it a zero-sum game?
So, the contribution of the scheme to economic development, to sustaining the economy. So let's even look at it from this angle. Permit me to use Alaba and Aspanda as examples. Yes. So if you drive towards Alaba from Festac, all down, you will probably see about 20 to 25 banks. Right? Majority of the economic activity that has sustained the employment in those banks is this scheme. If you go into Aspanda, right? So let's start from, so maybe go into Aspanda proper, right? And stand by the corner. Don't go there to buy anything. Just stand by the corner and observe. Look at the parking, look at the movement of goods, look at the trucks coming in to drop goods, drop containers, drop everything. What you will see is that a Nigerian economy exists within this scheme. And if you plug out the scheme from the Nigerian economy, there will be a large void. That void cannot be covered by crude oil. It cannot be covered by anything else. So, in terms of relevance, it's all known. At the moment, we are all at risk as a country to ensure that this scheme succeeds. Why? So if you go to Ivory Coast, Ghana, if you even go to Togo, right? Their electronics market are in the hands of foreigners. Their spare part markets are almost in the hands of foreigners.
Who are these foreigners?
Now, these are the Lebanese boys, the Indian boys, and so on and so forth. Nigeria, we almost lost that. If not because of this scheme, our electronics would be in the hands of foreigners. Electronics, the business of electronics within our society today, it's in the hands of this scheme. The televisions you see in Mega Plaza and all of this belong to the apprentice from this scheme. They don't belong to Mega Plaza. Mega Plaza creates the building and creates the air condition, right? The practitioners of this scheme present their goods and wait for 30 days, 60 days to get paid. If you look at Sims, for example, these are champions. If you look at Tino, these are champions. They all came out of this scheme. What these people are doing to society is
incredible.
Incredible, incredible, right? I don't know how many students a professor would teach in his lifetime, but averagely a professor should teach about maybe 10,000, right? Directly, maybe, averagely, right? The impact of this scheme equates, the master in this scheme equates to a professor, because he has waned one party, this party, and based on our communal living as a society, this party takes care of his parents, his in-laws, and he funds the education of others. And if you look at the multiplier effect, if you plug out this scheme from our society, the void will be too large. Nothing can fill it.
I can imagine. We'll definitely have a 2.0. Normally, I start this program by giving listeners my quote of the week, and the quote of the week I will take at the end, rather, and then I take your quote. And the quote is, we live by examples of our power, we will live not by the examples of our power, but by the power of our examples. Because what we are discussing today is a great example of how a scheme can impact life, impact people, and impact a nation. I take that quote again. We will not live by the examples of our power, but by the power of our examples. Now, there's a message that just came in. He said, please, guest, yes, I've read that. I'm just trying to be sure that I'm fair and square with the listeners. There are a lot of messages that came in, but I couldn't quite take a lot. Guys, it's really blah, blah, blah. Okay, most of the messages anyway, if there were questions that are associated with them, we would have answered. Mallam Damcida, what is your African proverb for the day?
So it's a bit funny, huh? And this I heard in one of the Nollywood movies a very long time ago. I think it was P.T. Doce. He says, the dangling nature of the he-goat's testicle does not mean it's going to fall.
Wow.
Right? So this has a lot of meanings, right? It means when you see people, don't underestimate.
Okay.
When you see a situation, look deeper for better understanding and meaning, right? So the dimension is vast.
Okay.
And from the moment I heard that, I started to look at Peter differently.
Yes, differently. Mallam Damcida, please give us your song for the week and for the day, so that we enjoy the rest of the Sunday.
The flavor song I told you, Madam, have you found it?
Listeners, thank you very much for staying with us. It's been a fantastic 1 hour drive with you. But the promise is that there's going to be, like I've always promised on other topical issues, on the IGBO apprentice scheme, we're going to have a 2.0, and like I promised, I'm going to bring somebody who have lived it and who has practiced it and who has multiplied it. Have a great Sunday ahead of you. Bye.
And that's it on The Discourse with Dr. Ken.